Hey, Bulldog fans, welcome into another edition of The New Normal, where we talk with Samford coaches, current and former student athletes, and staff about the changes brought on by COVID-19. I'm John McAfoose, and I'm happy to be joined today by Chika Okoli, who is a member of the Samford women's basketball team from 2005 through 2009, and is now helping to fight the COVID-19 pandemic on the front lines in New York City, where she works as a physician at the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and also has had an experience with COVID-19 herself, having tested positive back in March. First of all, Chika, thanks for taking some time to talk today. I can imagine things have been pretty crazy for you over the last couple of months, but hopefully they've slowed down a little bit here recently.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John, and thank you for having me.
Well, you graduated from Samford in 2009 as a sports medicine major. Just give us a little bit of a rundown of your career from that point on, as far as additional education, your residency, and what ultimately led you to New York City.
Yeah, definitely. So was a sports medicine major at Samford, knowing that was a pre-med major, and I knew I always wanted to go into medical school. I come from a medical background. My dad's a surgeon, my mom's a pharmacist, and a lot of doctors in my family. So I always knew that was the path, even as I was playing basketball. Academics was still very important to me. So after Samford, I actually took a couple years off just because I feel like I needed just some time off from school. I did travel a bit in that period. As you'll come to find out, traveling is one of my passions. But took a couple years off, and then took the MCAT, took some upper level biology courses just to kind of keep me still fresh during that time. And then got accepted to Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, where I grew up for the most part, and where my family was living and still lives. So did all 4 years of my medical school at Morehouse School of Medicine. And then after that, towards the end of my medical school, knew that I wanted to be in New York. I had actually had the pleasure of being involved in a summer fellowship program for medical students at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City, which is the hospital I work for now. So in between my first and second year of medical school, I went up for a summer in New York City to do a program there, did some research, and it all kind of came full circle as I'm working there now. But on that summer, I realized that I really love New York City. And originally from Buffalo, New York, which is in Western New York, very close to Toronto, very close to Canada, where Niagara Falls is. So love New York State, always wanted to kind of end up there. So it worked out really nicely, after training and everything, that I ended up in New York. Directly after medical school, I matched into residency, which is just training that you do after medical school in the specialty field that you want to go into as a doctor. I did training in internal medicine at Yale University School of Medicine in New Haven, Connecticut. So from Atlanta to New Haven, and that's a 3-year program. So I was there for 3 years, completed my training in internal medicine, and then started working as a attending physician post all training in New York City at Memorial Sloan Kettering.
I know during your residency at the Yale School of Medicine, you were named the 2017 Resident of the Year, recognizing your outstanding patient care and leadership. It's obviously a huge honor. Just tell us a little bit about what that meant to you.
Yeah, so for those that don't know much about residency, people say it's like one of the most difficult experiences doctors go through in their training. It's where you get the idea that like the 80-hour work week, where we have to have a limitation on the amount of hours we work. There were definitely times where I was right on that border. So it's one of the most challenging experiences that you go through in your medical training. And for me, it was very much like playing basketball. And I feel like even my background as a student athlete actually helped me, because I'm used to doing more than one thing at a time. And I'm used to having a pretty heavy load to carry on with academics and with athletics. And here it was just like with everything you're called to do. So you're still studying, you're still taking exams, but at the same time, you're working. You're getting paid and you're working, and you're a doctor, but you're still in training. So having to balance all of that, I feel like being a student athlete helped me a lot with that. But it was still difficult. So you're going through these experiences, you're waking up early, obviously, like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. If you want to get a workout in, like I do, like to stay active, you're waking up even earlier. And then you still have to find time to take care of yourself, and you're working 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, 24-hour shifts. So just when you're trying to like push through that and do the best you can, when you're able to be recognized and they say, hey, all the work that you're putting in, we see that, and you're actually doing better than you probably think you are, and you're actually doing a great job. That was great for me, because you do your best, but I feel like for me, you never really know. And I always feel like I'm my worst critic. I definitely fall into the category of that. So getting that just meant a lot, and the work that you're putting in is recognized, and you're doing a great job doing what you want to do, doing what you've been called to do, which is take care of people and help people. So that was a really big honor.
Tell us a little more about your current job at the Cancer Center and what some of your primary responsibilities and duties are, and what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, so primarily, so I'm a nocturnist, which is a hospitalist, so a internal medicine, so general medicine doctor who works only in the hospital. So I don't have patients in a clinic that I see on my own. I work in the hospital. So any patient that is admitted to the hospital, that's a non-surgical patient, so a patient that does not require surgery or their primary issue is not surgical, I will take care of them. And a nocturnist just means I work only at night. So I work from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., 12 nights a month, and I get to choose how many days I want to work. So I chose kind of 5 nights. So I'll work for 5 nights and then have, 5 to 10 days off, and then work again 5 nights and until I meet my 12 nights. And then while I'm actually there, I'll be admitting patients to the hospital. So I'll be in communication with the doctors in the emergency room. We'll kind of talk about why the patient's getting admitted to the hospital, what's going on. They'll tell me what they did, and then I'll kind of take over care from there, and I'll take care of them. So I'll see the patient. I'll have my medical opinion of what I think is going on. I'll give medications, all types of stuff. I'll check in on them throughout the night, and then kind of sign off to the day team what I did and what I think should be done next. So that's what it kind of looks like. And it varies severity of patient, what they're coming in with. You can get anything from nausea and vomiting to something like, their intestines are obstructed because of their cancer. So it just depends, very wide range of stuff you see. It's a wide variety. I see a lot of different people, and I think it's great to be able to see different people from different walks of life on a daily basis. So it's great.
Cancer patients are certainly in the high risk category for COVID-19. I think everybody's aware of the amount of cases in New York City over the last couple of months. How much of a direct impact has it had on the hospital where you work?
Definitely. So it's had a huge impact. And just for New York City alone, New York City was kind of the heartbeat of COVID for a very long time and was hit early on and very hard. And just New York City in general just has a lot of people, and it's very difficult to take some of the precautions that we've come to know are helpful in preventing the transmission of COVID. So New York City was definitely a very hard hit place. And as far as my hospital in particular, it is a specialty hospital. It is a cancer hospital. So typically we don't see patients that don't have cancer or that had established care with a doctor at Sloan Kettering. But because of how hard hit New York City was, we had to take on the burden of some of the other hospitals and get some transfers from other hospitals coming into our hospital. So initially, we were actually less busy than normal because people were staying home, kind of like social distancing, doing all that stuff, quarantine at home. And especially cancer patients, as you mentioned, are more high risk. So they took extra precautions to not really leave their homes. They were the ones that were being very strict with staying inside. So we weren't getting that many patients. And then when we realized that the whole city was just so burdened by this, that we needed more ventilators, more hospital beds, we did start accepting patients. And we did get a big wave of patients. And it was great to be able to take care of patients that we may not normally see, and really help them get them better and nurse them to care in the way that we do at Sloan Kettering. But yeah, it was a great experience.
You're dealing with vulnerable patients on a daily basis, but this is not the first time you've experienced something like that. You had a pretty incredible opportunity to travel to South Africa and work in a hospital there, and experiences like that can sometimes really be life-changing. How much of an impact did that trip have on your career?
It had a huge impact. So I do have a passion for traveling, and even with my dad very early on, I'm a first-generation American. My parents are Nigerian, and my dad came over here for college and did his education in the States. But when we were younger, we would actually go back to Nigeria and to some of their smaller towns there. My dad would just set up a clinic and start caring for patients. And seeing that growing up, I always, had a calling from an early age to be a doctor, but I said I would always love to do something like this if I got the opportunity. So one of the reasons why I chose Yale for residency is because they had an opportunity to do some global health through a program they had. So I chose South Africa out of the 4 locations that we had the option to choose from. And going there, specifically, we were taking care of patients who were co-infected with HIV and tuberculosis, both of which are obviously highly transmissible diseases, specifically tuberculosis. So they gave us about 150 N95 masks And they were like, okay, pack these in your bags and go ahead and go for it. And just hitting the grounds, literally hitting the grounds running, just working alongside the doctors in South Africa, and just taking care of these patients. It was such an eye-opening experience because they do not have the resources that we have here. We were in a rural part, about 3 hours outside of Durban, in South Africa, and they just do not have the means that we have here. Whereas you see people that, conditions that you see here that would, you treat it like this and people get better and they go home, people were dying of this just because of the lack of access to some of the specialty care. And it's a really different situation. So taking care of such a vulnerable population with viruses, really, when COVID started really taking off, I was like, okay, this is something I've seen before. So you kind of transition into that mindset, and global health becomes almost like community health in a way. And New York City had a lot of issues that you see that I saw in South Africa. It was interesting to compare the experiences, and also to have kind of like experience beforehand in dealing with just an overwhelmed population of sick people with communicable viruses, with limited resources, which is what we had in New York City for kind of early on in the fight against COVID.
You know, we mentioned briefly at the start of the interview that you've also been on the patient side of the COVID-19 pandemic, having tested positive yourself. Obviously, the symptoms vary from person to person. Some people really aren't showing symptoms at all. Just tell us what your experience was like.
Yes. So I varied on the side where I had a lot of symptoms. I'd say almost all the symptoms that you read about with COVID. So my first symptom was on March 7th. I didn't get diagnosed until March 24th. So in that time, I was just on a roller coaster. And throughout my time having COVID, a roller coaster of symptoms. So started with a sore throat. The next day, really hit on with the flu-like symptoms. So body aches, feeling some chest heaviness and some chest pain, headaches, congestion, feeling feverish, all of these things, dehydration, and a lot of weakness and fatigue. Body aches to the point where like the shirt on my back would like give me pain. That's how severe the symptoms were, like a flu, but like times 1,000. And obviously as an athlete, I deal with these aches and pains, and I'm used to kind of having a certain level of discomfort kind of at all times. And this was just another level. So had those symptoms, and what's difficult about COVID symptoms is that you'll feel better and then they'll come back. And then it's almost like a rotation of symptoms. Like one symptom goes away and then another one will come. And that was difficult. So had that for the first 2 weeks. And then I lost all sense of taste and smell. And that had been going on for a week. I didn't really recognize it as such until I read a New York Times article that said that this may be like a sign of COVID, especially in young, healthy people that don't typically present with some of the other stuff. So I was like, okay, I need to get tested. And when I first started having symptoms, we were still very early on. Tests weren't really widely distributed, especially for somebody who's young, fit, healthy like me. So I wasn't really high on the priority for testing. But after this symptom, I was like, okay, I really need to get tested. So my job tested me, and I think I tested at 11, and my result came back in like record time, positive for COVID. So yeah, that was just really interesting. And then over the next several weeks, I was dealing with the same thing, symptoms on and off. And it was about, I'd say 5 weeks in total before my symptoms completely subsided. So obviously after my test came back positive, I, stopped working and was quarantining at home. One of the things that helped me kind of get through COVID is my faith as well, and being able to just like pray and rely on God's healing power to get me through it as well. So knowing the medical, but also, tapping into the spiritual as well, and prayer, and some of those things I was able to continue at Samford because of it being a Christian school or whatnot. One of the things I loved about Samford, taking some of those Bible classes and stuff, just really helped me stay in my faith. So I don't know, I wanted to add that in.
Before I let you go, you were a big part of the women's basketball program when you were here. You were captain for several seasons. Do you still have relationships with your teammates and coaches from when you played at Samford? And have you been able to follow along with the program over the years?
Yeah, absolutely. So interestingly enough, in this, I have kept in touch with all of the people who came in with me in my senior year. So Sarah Nuxel, Monica Maxwell, Megan Wilderwater, Carmen Smith, Jennifer Elkins, we all stay in touch, and I've been in touch with each of them. We try to go to some of the homecomings that are going on, that go on at Samford every year. We've met a few times, people that have gotten married, people that have been passing through in the same city. We do keep in touch, but especially with COVID, we've been on Zoom calls with all 6 of us and have, been talking and catching up. So that's been great. And kind of just reopened the door for communication even more so than we were before. And I still talk to Coach McLean. Me and her, one of the assistant coaches I was coaching at the time that I was at Samford, me and her are still on a text. She was just texting me the other day. We talked about COVID and stuff. So yeah, and definitely through social media, generally keep in touch with some of the others. But having keeping up with Samford as well with the team, has seen that even that they did get a new coach recently and made it to the tournament first year. So obviously was really happy about that, really proud of Samford and what it's been able to do in that regard. Having played and kind of been at the turning point of the program, and then seeing it play out and it being sustained has been really nice to watch as well. So that's great.
Well, Chika, again, I really appreciate your time. I know all Samford fans and alumni are proud of the work you're putting into to make a difference on a daily basis.
Thank you so much, John. Really happy to be able to speak with you, and yeah, stay safe. Have a great rest of the day.
That's Chika Okoli. I'm John McAfoose. That'll do it for this edition of The New Normal. As always, stay tuned to our Samford Athletics website and social media pages for more updates.